Welcome to our new session, New Life with artists, illustrators, designers, and creatives all over the world. And today, our guest is Christina Brown. She's a watercolor and mixed media artist from Buffalo. And Christina began her artistic journey during the pandemic, actually. She used watercolors as an accessible and therapeutic creative outlet, and now she's a full-time math teacher, but she also creates a lot of wonderful and very helpful tutorials for artists and creatives. And so I think it would be very interesting to know how she combine all this together, math teaching and creating art tutorials, also how to find beauty in every day, and more about how to make your hobby and passion something that can give you energy every day. If you have any questions, you're always welcome welcome to drop in the comments. And if you want to get all the highlights from the interview, you're very welcome to subscribe to the newsletter. Then you will get all the highlights with all designers, illustrators who we speak with in your inbox. And interview in a few seconds. Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine too. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Is it? It's early morning there, yeah?
It's 8 o'clock in the
Oh, eight
morning here.
o'clock.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for joining so
sure.
early. Please tell us a little bit about your artistic journey, your background. It's very interesting to know how you started creating art.
I am a part of a very wonderful group of people who started painting during the pandemic. I was teaching, still full time, but from home, and I had three young children at home who are school age and younger. And so I found that I needed something for me, and I'd grown up from a family that was pretty artistic or had a lot of creativity. And so it had always been somewhat accessible. So it felt like something I could do, but I knew I just needed something for me. So I really just looked through like all of the artistic communities that were creating on Pinterest and Instagram, and I felt inspired to try something myself. And not there were so many different ways of doing it, so many almost, I would say, more abstract ways of doing it that felt like I could do it too. And so that's kind of why I started engaging in my artistic journey back during that time. And because there were so many of us doing the same thing, we were there to support each other and build our own community, which was really wonderful and nice.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And before that, now you're working as a math teacher, right?
Yes,
Do you
yes.
find anything in common between these two process of teaching and creating art?
Yeah,
Or
so my background as being a math teacher is that I'm actually not I've, I'm not math certified. I'm Ed certified, which in the States means you can teach any grade level from basically when they're really young and not school age up until sixth grade, which is like 11 or 12 years old. And so I can teach any subject up to that point. And when I moved into a middle school setting, they decided to departmentalize, which means you have one subject to teach all day long, kind of like a secondary school. And the administrator that I had at the time said, "Well, I think you should absolutely teach math." And I'm like, "What? I? Like that's not my specialty."
Mhm.
And he said that at the time he was like, "Well, someone has to do it, and I feel like you could probably, you've done it before, so I think you could probably teach yourself to do it even better than you're already doing it." So I feel like my journey into art has had the same journey that I had into teaching math. So I was not an expert, and I went into it self-taught, reteaching myself things that I hadn't been practicing for quite some time. And now, after doing it for more than 20 years, I feel like I have this ability to make people feel safe when they do math. Like the kids come in thinking they're going to hate it. And then by the time we get to month two, they're like, I actually might like math this year. And I'm like, that's good. Like, because it's okay to make mistakes. Like, that's when you learn. And I'm very familiar with making lots of mistakes. So I think when it comes to art, and my tutorial style is very much leaning into the process is important, more important than the outcome. Like, that's where you learn, that's where you get um, your most of your success. It can't be in the final product. It has to be in how you feel while you're making the art. So I think that's accessible to a lot of people. I think a lot of people would rather do than buy art. Not that they don't want to buy art, but I think they like the experience. I think there's something important to people to be able to participate in that experience.
You mentioned that you were part of the community of creatives who started painting and
Yes.
drawing, and you choose the watercolors, which is not the easiest art media, in my opinion. Uh, how did you study how to use it?
So to be fair, when I started using art, I tried a lot of different things. I did acrylic, I did watercolor, I did pastels, I did mixed media. I think there's still mixed media in me. Like, I think I still like using some of those things. But as a mom of young children, I needed something that was easy to clean up. Because like, I just needed to be able to sit down for a few minutes, walk away, and feel like I had accomplished something and not feel like there's a giant disaster around me, because my kids were creating that all the time. And I had seen so many like very simplified pieces of art using watercolor that were just beautiful. And that was inspiring. Like, I felt like if I just, used a little ink and added a little splash of watercolor, I could create something beautiful. And I think that's where I leaned into watercolor more. The simple cleanup piece at the end for sure, but also the simple accessibility to start. And it's not as expensive of a medium. I think if you're starting watercolor, I think the most important tool you can have is paper that is watercolor appropriate, like watercolor paper. But you can start at super like those silly little like kids pans of watercolor. You can paint with that and still create beautiful things. You don't need to buy expensive watercolors. Paints, I do because I love it so much. But I don't think in order to participate in the art experience, you need to spend a ton of money when you're working with watercolor.
Yeah. And so you painted with watercolors, and what next? What inspired you to create art tutorials? It's totally different process. And when did you start? What was your first
I
steps?
think part of it was I was inspired by a lot of the teachers I had seen working online. They were making art accessible without having to meet someone in person. And I think the fact that I was finding my peers within this art community starting to do similar things or some of the same things, I knew that with my teaching background, I could do the same. And I think people were like, there was a need or a want to be able to participate in art that way. And so I know I had it back in 2020, and I felt like a few years in I could see people also wanting that, people saying, oh, that looks so easy, you're such a natural. And I'm like, I mean, I think I'm naturally passionate about it. I think I really love art, and I think I really love beautiful things, but I don't think that you need to be artistically inclined to be good at art. I think you need to just practice and be passionate about it to be willing to participate in this forum. And I think that generally speaking, that's where I entered. I felt like people were doing that for me, and I wanted to give back. I wanted to give back to people in the same way.
Can you walk us through your process of creating the art tutorial? Because I know that many artists are thinking about sharing their creative process with others, teach others, but it could sound really difficult. And if you can make it into, split it into small steps and give some advice, it would be nice.
Sure. Um, I would say that I try and keep it as simple as possible. And I do think that we have social media platforms like Instagram that do help with that. The Reels is it's pretty easy to make a reel. I mean, it can be in the most simplest way. You just need to make a tiny snippet with a, time sped up and you can post a reel, right? Like you can post a really quick and inspiring tutorial. Um, I think moving out of that space, moving out of the social media space, it can be a little bit more complicated. YouTube needs like, full on video editing and all that kind of stuff, but there's apps out there that are making that easier as well. So I use CapCut. I've used Canva in the past. I've used Vimeo. I've used lots of different ones. Right now, I'm kind of leaning into CapCut and then uploading my videos on YouTube that way specifically. It is time consuming though. And, if you're going to be into the full-time tutorials, it's not as easy when you're working full time. Like for me, it's very difficult to get those videos uploaded, and partially because this is like my art studio is my house with my kids, with my dogs and my cats, and it's loud. So trying to get like the video with the no sound in the background can be really difficult. And because I'm not here during the day, I work during the day. It's one of those like on the weekends I kind of crunch the time in, and I'm trying to be mindful of how much time I need and what to make, and that can be really overwhelming, but I think it's so fulfilling too because people really love it and they give you the feedback that like keeps you going, you know what I mean? So um I would say those are the apps that I use. um as far as like how to make a tutorial, I don't script very much. I have a theater background. I did more theater when I was in high school. And because I teach without a script, I just kind of make it up as I go. And it's like I'm talking to an audience rather than doing voiceovers, because that takes me a really long time to do voiceovers, because then it should be perfect, right? And I just don't have that kind of time. So generally I just kind of voice over while I'm working and then cut and edit as needed, which is very minimal, and then post. So,
For how long have you been creating these art tutorials?
I would say maybe the last year and a
Mm.
half. I think also I surround myself with other artists who are doing similar things, and we can talk and back and forth with each other about what works and what doesn't. Um, Having a community does matter, and I will say that like I've I am trained to be outgoing because of my job, but there is definitely like an introvert here for sure. And that being said, I still think it's important that we use social media as what it's called. It's social. You're supposed to interact with people. Like you can't be mad at the system that incentivizes these kind of conversations and talking to people and having conversations about what to do and how to do it. And um, as artists, I know a lot of us are more introverted, right? Like we like to we'd rather be home painting or creating than be out and socializing. I think a lot of us are that way. So, but here it provides more of a safe space to do that. And I feel like having those conversations with my friends here has really helped me like figure out what to do and what to paint and what to create. I have friends that we often talk about like what's on trend, like what are people talking about, what are they making, what are we seeing in social media that's doing well, and then sometimes we use that to inspire our own versions of that as we're creating tutorials.
Yeah, are all of your tutorials free or free of charge, or we can buy it somewhere? Because I saw a lot of the reels in your on your Instagram, also on YouTube. Do you share them like freely, or do you sell some workshops?
I'm not at the point of selling workshops
Mm-hmm.
yet. I might be at some point. Right now, I'm just kind of, I have a workshop coming up in
Mm-hmm.
the next week or so through About Watercolor. It's an online Instagram group, and all of the workshops are free. You just have to sign up. You have to like follow the accounts that are participating, and then you have to like follow the account that's hosting, and then that'll all be through Instagram as well. But they'll link it to YouTube links that are unlisted, and then people can access them if they follow those accounts. But at this point, I have not started selling anything yet. A lot of that is time, and I don't always have it. And so for me right now, I'm slowly building up potentially to get to that point. I'm hoping that when I retire, which should be in like 10 years, that I could have a more full-time artistic tutorial slash um, active potentially income coming from art. But right now it's more passive.
Yeah. And I suppose you have an Etsy shop. Do you sell any originals or
I
prints
do.
there?
I
Yeah.
do. Yes. Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Etsy's great in that it does a lot of the work for you. Like doesn't you don't have to worry about creating your website. Um, I think that, like with anything, you need to market a lot, and that can also take time. I don't think it's, I don't think you can create an Etsy shop and just expect things to sell. I think you need to work at it. Currently, I have a lot of painted flower originals, or floral or botanical originals, but I do have also mini 2025 calendars. They're little pop up calendars, and I used illustrations that I worked on over the summer to create these little pop up calendars. They're like desk calendars that you can put on your desk, and that they're super cute. And just to kind of dip my toe in production and seeing how that works.
Mm-hmm. Did maybe you notice that some of their prints or goodies sell better? Any tips that you can give to beginner artists who would love to have some income from selling, additional income, of course, not the main one, from selling their art?
I think as a starting artist, realistically, you're probably not going to jump right into the print market. I think you need to figure out what your style is first, right? Like you don't want to have like various different types of styles happening all in your prints. You generally want to be on theme. I think that's more of sellable than it is to be just randomly placing stuff on on your Etsy account. I do think that the value of prints also comes with some experience with technology. I think you need to know how to scan and edit some of that stuff. Like that's taken me some time to figure out. I use Procreate to kind of like edit down any originals that I'm using and then turning them into prints. It can be time consuming, and I think sometimes that's something people don't always understand. Like the one thing that I would definitely love to consider in the future that I haven't really researched yet is licensing. And I know you did that interview not that long ago with I don't remember her name, but she talked all about licensing and how that works and how important research is, and knowing your product and knowing your brand and knowing who to sell your product to, and all that stuff can be really complicated. And I think I want to like really spend more time doing that in the future, because I do see that there's sometimes value in that. There is print on demand, which if you scan your work that way, you can have a print on demand company print out your work. Like I'm thinking Society 6, I'm thinking Redbubble. Those companies will produce your work for you. You just have to make sure it's edited in a fashion that would make your stuff more producible for various things, like not just prints, but like shower curtains or cups and like that sort of thing. So there is some like technological editing involved that you need to have and understand in order to make those things successful, I would say. I think Cat Coke does a really good job with that market particularly. But I mean, those are the type of people. You have wonderful patterns, and I'm sure you're very well versed in how all of that works. But I do think that there's art is such a huge market of different things that you can really tackle. I think it's hard to like pin down what's going to work best for you until you figure out what your style is personally. Like, what is your artistic style and what is your personal goal? Like, what do you hope to accomplish? And I think for me, the tutorial is my background. It requires less work for me. Like, I feel more natural in that space. And so sometimes I think I could definitely work on the print and original, and you could sell all of that stuff. Um, I feel more comfortable marketing my teaching style than I do my prints and or my art. So I wish I could say I had had like tons of success in that area. I have not yet. It's still a work in progress.
How would you describe your artistic style, and how do you think what helped you to develop it, to discover?
I think you need to try lots of different things. I think you need to like I wouldn't stick to one genre of art. I think you need to take classes in lots of different genres of art. And stick to the things that catch your eye and that you liked. Like don't test yourself out in a media that you're like, oh, I don't really like this, but maybe I should try it. Do something that you like, that your that catches your eye. But I did a lot of abstract art when I first started. I felt like people like Laura Horn, I'm trying to think of other ones that stand out to me. There's so many really amazing abstract artists, and I felt like I needed that to have an idea of how I was going to create my art space. Like, even as I knew that I loved illustrative art, like I loved book illustrations. Um, for me, I needed to know space and like the rule of threes, and like how space matters when you're creating, and understanding like how the value of odd numbers versus even numbers when you're creating, and where do you place things on your page. And I feel like abstract did a lot of it created a lot of mindset around when I'm creating that I wouldn't have had before if I hadn't taken those classes. But I did them with people that I already respected and thought did really beautiful work. Um, I also spent a lot of that time, like when I first started, there's an artist called Terry Runyon who does a lot of like illustrative, like animal, like super loose, super quick animal illustrations. And so I feel influenced by a lot of her work as well. I've done portrait work, complicated portrait work, um, but I liked that fast feedback. So what I ended up doing, I think, was ultimately leaning into topics, like trending topics, and then creating a loose but illustrative style with that. Um, I would like to lean more into illustrative, like more complicated illustrations, I think. Um, I actually signed up for a course next year with Danielle Donaldson, who's an amazing illustration artist. And she offers yearly courses and small courses for people. And she just gave me this insight into how to draw, and that it's all muscle memory and all the colors that you use, and like how valuable it is to understand the value of colors and how you choose them, and complementary colors and analogous colors. And I think you need to broaden your learning before you hone your style. Like, you need to know all the things a little bit before you decide what works best for you and what people love the most. I think the combination of the two really helped create my, I would say, illustrative loose style.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. That's really very interesting, and I wish you a lot of wonderful exploration on your course. And can you please share with us how do you manage to balance your main day job, artistic uh, career, actually, and creating art tutorials, and your family and other dogs, cats, as you
It's
said?
hard. It's
What
hard.
does your
Yeah.
day routine look like?
I mean, the day routine is, I really don't like, if it's a work day, I don't do anything with any art at all until maybe possibly when I get home. And even then it depends, because I have to drive my kids to gymnastics, or I have to pick them up from clubs after school. Like, my husband's really good about taking the kids in the morning to school and doing all the morning stuff. So usually when I wake up in the morning, I go to work, and then my head is in the work game. And then when I come home, it's very much like, what do my kids need? What do I need to do? How many things do I need to do for them? And figuring all of that out. So oftentimes I would say the weekends are my jam. Like, weekends are where I really sit down. I love to paint during daylight hours. I love the natural light. The natural light in this room is amazing, and I love it so much. And that's really important to me. So, what I often will do is I will sit down for a solid 2 or 3 hours while my husband's taking the kids out, or while my kids are playing, and I'll create content. And sometimes it's based on conversations with people that I've had about topics that we're going to focus on this week or this month. And then sometimes it's just purely personal. And during that time, I'll create the tutorials. I'll create my posts. My posts are generally on and off throughout the week. I usually work on my posts at night and then make them all at once. So I can post them on and off during the week. So I don't have to worry about every day having one more thing to do. I like to bulk paint, and I like to bulk post. So I create a lot of things in one sitting when I have the time. Even at night, especially. Night is the perfect time to create your posts, because I don't like painting at night as much, because the light doesn't look as, it makes the art look as a little wonky to me, a little more warmed up than I'd like. Um, but yeah, that's generally how I do it. And then as far as like The animals are my comfort, like outside of art, because art is highly therapeutic for me. But my pets are highly comforting to me. They're often with me while I paint. They're usually right next to me. Um, and so for they're like a bonus. They're a bonus for sure. And then usually we have something on the weekends. Like my husband and I will plan something with the kids on the weekends, and then when we come home, I know I have that solid chunk of time to do stuff. So
Could
that's
you
that's
please?
my balance. I don't know that it's perfect for everybody, but it works for
Yeah,
me.
it's interesting to know about your experience. Um, what about therapeutic effect of art? Can you tell more about this? What is art for you? How your creative process look like?
I would say that I think that when it's your job, it's harder to be therapeutic, right? Like when you're a professional artist, it's hard to like it because your brain is in so many different places. You're trying to create for people, you're trying to create for your income, you're trying to create for all of these things. But I think that it's super important to find something like whether it's once a day or once a week to sit down and just paint for you and or to create for you and nobody else. Like that's a therapy, right? Like when you're not doing it for somebody else, that you're doing it for you. And maybe that's every day. Maybe you have that's how it feels every time you create. Sometimes it doesn't. Like sometimes it feels like a job. And that's okay too, because you wouldn't keep doing it if you didn't still like it. But I think for me, it's I have to set aside time where it's just me and the page and what do I want to do, not what's going to look good, not what is going to be popular, but what do I want to do? And that's where the therapy comes in because it's just quiet time in my head and on the page and just watching the water move around. I think that's also why I like watercolor so much because it's the water and the pigment moving around is highly satisfying. It feels so nice to see that move, especially when you got like granulated paints. Those are great.
Have you faced this blank page block when you don't know how to start?
Yes. So I have lots of art books. And so what I'll do is, or I will have like you know that generally I'm a botanical artist, but I have books of flowers and I'll pull those books out and I'll just open them up and I'll just try and copy what I see. So sometimes like a lot of us, I would argue that we don't create just from our brains, we create by being inspired by others, right? So sometimes hi Johnny, I see Johnny in the comments. Sometimes we create for a topic, but I think oftentimes we create by copying others but recognizing the copy, right? Like knowing that like this was inspired by this and recognizing the person who you made that from. You can't learn if you're not copying from someone to start. And it's when you're starting to sell that product as your own that it really needs to be more individualized, right? Like recognize who you're using as inspiration and also understand that we learn from each other and we have to use and mimic the things that we have in front of us. So when I am blank and I don't know what to create, I grab one of my books and I'll open it up. And sometimes it'll just be photographs. And sometimes it'll be artist like tutorial books that I haven't done or created before. Or sometimes I use my old art. Like I'll pull old art pieces out and I'm like, what did I do? Like, which one do I really like feel inspired by right now? And I'll place it in front of me and I'll be like, ooh, let's do that again, but with this color. So like I really I feel like using ourselves and using other people is the best way to break through that like blank page vibe.
Yeah, I totally agree. Actually, sometimes do the same. Just when I find one of my old artworks. Can you tell us, please, what art materials do you use? Because you mentioned that you use more affordable watercolors, and it's true. Then for some artists, some people, uh, art materials could look pretty pricey, and it
Mhm.
can stop them from creating, which is really sad. This is why, if you can share with us the brands or also give some tips, what materials?
Sure, sure. Um, I'm a fan of pan hand painted or hand created watercolor, mostly because I like supporting small business. And while not, I wouldn't identify them as like crazy affordable. There are affordable hand paint artists out there that I would highly recommend. Addison and Sedgwick are highly affordable paints. They're not super like granulated, but if you're looking to just support a small business, there are so many small business hand paint artist, like hand mold artists out there that are selling on Etsy. Art by Wei is one of my favorites. She has all different sorts of paints, but they're always sold out. So like I'm not even sure if her website is still fully stocked right now, but she's great. Masha's watercolor, I wouldn't say that she's affordable, but she's worth the splurge. She has some of the most stunning granulating paints I've ever seen. And for those of you who aren't familiar with granulating paints, basically they're like when you put the paint down, it's not just one color that comes down, it's multiple colors. So like sometimes you'll see like I'll put down what looks like it's a yellow green color, and then you'll see little splotches of like blue in there. So like that's when like those things start to come out, and it just that is like the therapy for me is when I see the granulated paints. That being said, like I think Kuretake has some great affordable pan selections, and they're more gouache like paints, but I really like them, and I think that they're great. Daniel Smith is a solid pick. I don't know if buying tubes is really a good idea out of the gate. Tubes are pretty expensive, but they last forever, because you just keep reactivating with water, and then they're there again, and it's like I don't. Once you buy a tube, you're pretty good for a very long time. That's also the nice part. Trying to think of other general. Winsor Newton is pretty good. Um, Trying to think of other ones that I would that I've I really do like Schminky, but Schminky are also expensive. Honestly, if you're looking to just start, just go to an art store and find a pan set, like any pan set, it doesn't matter. And just play with it or use your kids' paints. Like my kids wanted after I was done doing a live the other day, my kids were like, "Can we paint watercolors with you?" And I'm like, of course we can." And they're like, "Are you going to use your paints?" I'm like, "No, I'm going to use your paints." I'm like, "We just need good paper. Just need good paper." But even then, like Fabriano has really great paper, and they're pretty affordable as far as I'm concerned. Like some of them, I use B paper a lot. B paper comes in like sets of like 4 by 5 by 7s or 4 by 6s, just sheets of paper, and I can buy a set of 50 for $30. And and that's really affordable here. Like to get like 50 sheets of paper for $30 is really great. So I really think if you're going to invest your money, do it in the paper and don't worry about the type of watercolor you have. I think you really can use anything. I think that if you want something special, you really should look into the handcrafted, hand mold watercolor groups on Etsy. And there's plenty of them. All you have to do is put in their handmade watercolor and you'll see a huge amount of people pop up that you can purchase from. Masha's is a favorite. Wei is a favorite. Cosmic Creations does really great sparkly watercolors. I don't use them a lot, but I've been using them a lot this season because of Christmas. Everybody likes sparkly around Christmas. So
Thank you for so many advices. What do you hope your audience takes away from watching your tutorials, art tutorials? It's really interesting to know. You definitely receive some feedback from the viewers.
I would say that you can, I guess for me, it's the safe place, right? Like it's a
Mm-hmm.
safe place to create, and that there's no judgment here. Like you do you. Like I am here to back you and support you. And generally, like if you ask me a question, I'll get right back to you. I try and be pretty good about that. I just want people to create knowing that they can do it and that it's not about some hidden genetic talent that you have, that you're not born with it, that you're not like you were born to be this good at something, that it really can happen for you if you really want it. That you can create or craft anything you want if you want it that much. That doesn't mean that you're going to make tons of money. It doesn't mean that like you're going to be this famous artist, but that if you want to create for you, that you can, and you can be proud of yourself and proud of the things that you create. Not everything I post is amazing. I know this. Not everything I post I'm happy with, but I'm often surprised by the response I get back. Like I'll be like, I don't really like this one that much, but I'll post it. Maybe someone will like it. And then it ends up being one of my most popular reels for the year. And I'm just like, what? Like I did a lavender one back in July, and I literally was like, I guess this is okay. It's not my best, but I'll post it. And it was a huge hit. Like, don't doubt yourself so much. Like my first time posting, I was so intimidated. I was like, this isn't very good. And if I go back and look, I'm like, oh gosh, that was terrible. But in retrospect, I'm glad I did because I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't. And I think trust that, trust in yourself to make mistakes and that you'll learn from those mistakes and that you can create beautiful things. And beautiful things to you are going to be beautiful things different to somebody else. But as long as you love it, that's what matters most.
What advice would you give to someone whose day job is not connected with art or some visual creative stuff at all? How can they start? Any practical advices?
Um, I think if your day job doesn't include any sort of artistic practice, then this is the perfect thing for you. Like, especially if you're looking for something else, right? And because we live in such a society where we present and show off our artistic abilities and or practices, there's so much you can do out there. Like, just start watching people art more, and that's inspirational. Like, that's going to drive you to do something, right? um, Watch the reels, watch the tutorials, watch the YouTube videos, watch the TikTok videos, watch or just look at people's art. Like, go to local places. For me, I like to, like, I can't right now because it's winter here and we have snow on the ground, but I'll go to the botanical gardens sometimes and they have like art nights. And you pay like a $10 ticket to go in with a sketchbook, and they give you I don't even, I think they give you water too, and you sit down and you just pick a spot and you just like let whatever you're looking at speak to you and you create from it. And it doesn't even have to look like what it looked like originally. Like, you can just let the colors inspire you. When it's nice out, I will go to like local gardens or local places, and just use that stuff to kind of like, even again, it's sometimes it's just shapes that I pick out. Like, I'll see a shape and I'll just be like, oh, I like that shape. Can I recreate that shape? And what colors should I use? Should I use the colors they have or should I use different colors? And it just creates this like, I also think it's just good for your brain, especially as we get older, like your mental health. Like, it's only going to make your brain more active as you get older if you're engaging in something creative, I think personally. um my family has dementia in its history. And so I think I worry about that for myself sometimes. And I think that having this practice beyond when I'm retired and beyond that, I think is going to potentially keep my brain in a good place as I get older. Not that you can battle like genetics, but it's got to make it better, right? Like, it's not going to make it worse. So if you're worried about long-term health, I do think art practices can help improve long-term health, at least mental health.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps. Lastly, looking back, what would you tell your younger self when you just started your artistic journey?
Um, It's funny because I look back at my youngest self a lot as I create. I had parents that were crafty. My father was a carpenter. My mother was musical and artistic. And we did a lot of, we were very involved in our church growing up. And so I did a lot of like, we did a lot of performances, like the singing and the, all that kind of stuff. And so I look back at that person and how I just did it. I did it because it was expected and because my family, it's just what we do. But I remember thinking about like art as in like creative art, like painting and crafting, and thinking, gosh, my parents are so good. I'll never be that good. So I'll just do music because music feels easier. Like, I don't have to jump and figure things out. I already doing this because it was expected. Um, I wish I had taken more art classes, or I believed in myself more back then. That just because someone around you is doing it better than you doesn't mean you shouldn't try. And that while I've appreciated and loved this experience, I think maybe I would have taken a different path in my career if I had attempted to, be more artistic when I was younger. I just remember longing for that and seeing people doing all of these artistic things and thinking, wow, I wish I could do that. But anytime I tried, just being like underwhelmed by myself and then just giving up. And I wish I had not done that. So I think back to that and think, what if I had not been so underwhelmed with myself and given up so quickly? Where would I be? And to think that I'm where I am right now in less than 5 years is pretty incredible. So I think that if you can like not beat yourself down so much and compare yourself to others in a positive way. Like, how can I create that and be as good as them? Or how can I create that but be different and still be me? I think that's all stuff that can be really valuable to you as a person. So I think that's what I would tell myself back then.
Christina, thank you so much for sharing all your insights and for sharing your art tutorials with the world, because
Sure.
your videos are really inspiring, and I wish you even more inspiration and less self-doubt, because you and your art are amazing.
Thank
Thank you for sharing
thank
with us.
you. Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me here. It was a surprise. I was like, what, me? Me? Okay. All right. I have one question before we go into the new year for you. What
Yeah,
are
yeah,
you,
of course.
what are you inspired to create this coming 2025 with your patterns and your artwork?
Uh, what I'm inspired in 2025?
Hmm. Yeah, like do you have plans? Like what are you going to create this year?
This year, actually, I haven't planned this year yet, but but I'm going to create more originals, I think, because lately I've started to paint on canvases more, because my work is very much connected with online art education. So I spend a lot of time on the business part, on the production and all this stuff. And lately I had less time on draw and paint exactly, so I want to spend some time on that. But also my main goal for 2025 and 2026 and so on is to make art more accessible for all people who just want to create, because I see so many people who would love to draw, but for some reason they think they can't, and it's not true. I believe that everyone can draw, every person is creative, and I would be more than happy if I can help someone, more and more people, to find their passion in art, to support them in this artistic journey.
I love that. We're on the same page. Just
Yeah,
different art, different genres
yeah,
of art. That's all.
yes, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and have a wonderful day.
You too.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you everyone for listening. Bye.